south of am I correct that we got through the whole first page, the parsing and the warm-up of chapter 8 last time?
You assigned it as homework.
I don't think that we did
All right,
that together. No,
Well, we'll do that
I didn't
together.
even get to that homework, so that was real trouble.
Okay. I don't know how far we'll get tonight, but we'll try to. My goal is to not drag our feet too much. I want to allow time for discussion, questions, and so forth. But I know how we are. We like to follow rabbit trails, and I do that myself. But let's restrain ourselves a little bit for the sake of making some progress. Is that all right?
That's good.
Okay. Parsing. I'll take the first one. Hemera. The iota subscript under the alpha tells me it's dative, singular, feminine. Does it tell you that?
Yeah.
Okay. The lexical form is the same as the word hemera. The genitive is hemeras. And eta for hey is the article, the form of the article that tells us that it's a feminine noun.
It's the same, but without the iota subscript, the lexical, right?
Yes,
Okay.
You're right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it was the same because it lacks the iota subscript. Because the lexical form has to be nominative. And that's right. Thank you. And the inflected meaning, I used all the possible key words that you use with the dative, to, for, in, or with. The context will help you decide which one is best. And then since it's singular, I said a day, to a day, or for a day, or something like that.
What could it mean? Until the day?
That's a stretch, I think, because to form that phrase, you would want a preposition, which we
don't have that one.
Or an adverb, excuse me. Until is an adverb. Heos is the adverb until. But there are other ways to form that phrase. The reason I know that is because there's one verse that I did some studying on where the preposition was ace, which we're learning prepositions now. Oh, and by the way, I gave you a handout of a list of Greek prepositions. These are all the what's called proper prepositions. There are others called improper prepositions, but that terminology is used pretty universally. And whether or not a preposition is proper depends on whether it forms a compound.
So these are proper?
A proper preposition is one that can either be used independently by itself or in combination with a verb. It's a compound. For instance, epignosko. Gnosko is a verb meaning to know, or I know. And epignosis, epi is just a preposition that strengthens it. And you could possibly translate it full knowledge or complete knowledge. So that's an example of a compound verb formed with a preposition and a verb. And all of the verbs, all of the prepositions that form a compound with a verb are considered proper prepositions.
Okay. Carl, I think I missed something. Are these proper or not proper?
These that I've listed are all proper.
Okay.
Most of them are listed in our vocabulary section at the end of the chapters, and I've listed where you can find it in that vocabulary section. A few of them, 3 of them, I put an asterisk there. You won't find that in any of the vocabulary sections in the book. You will find them in the the lexicon at the
Okay.
back of the book.
All right. In the interest of following what you said, so epi, that's
Yeah,
epsilon,
epi, you can use it
P
either with the genitive,
iota. Is
data.
that so? That's the one on that's epsilon
epsilon P iota.
P
Yeah,
iota. And you said epigenoso. It means what?
it means. Well, let me back up. Gnosko, the verb by itself means I know,
Yeah.
but epignosko means I fully know, or I completely
really
know.
know?
I'm sorry.
Could it mean like I really know?
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
So is
It's still a verb. Like
Yes,
over
it's still a
knowledge.
verb, but it's compounded with a
so
preposition.
that's a situation that's not really described in this.
No.
Okay.
Well, the last paragraph there,
Yeah, I'm reading that.
Koine Greek has 18 so-called proper prepositions. Proper in that they may be used both independently by themselves
Hmm.
or in combination with verbs.
Okay.
And I gave you an example.
Right.
Ekbalo is another compound verb. Ek means from or away from. Balo means I throw to. So ekbalo means to cast out.
I think
Or
he
to
gave an
throw out.
example of a few in the vocab
He might
section
have,
too, like ecstasy
yeah.
or ecstasis would be the Greek.
Ekstasis, yeah. Stasis is to take is a stand. A
Right.
person takes a stand. To take a stand away from is ecstasy. And that's a verb that is used, among other things, to describe a person who's out of his mind. He's standing beside himself.
Right. Right.
So
Out of body.
I'm trying to follow.
I don't like the idea of having an out-of-body experience.
Okay, maybe so.
Well, I mean, that's literally.
I mean, so what you said, looking at what's provided in these cases and what you described is not described on this paper. There's nothing here about how to
No,
use this with a
he's
verb.
not. This is
And that's okay.
additional
You're
information.
giving
I'm
us
giving you.
information that we're
Yeah.
not going to remember because I didn't, unless I write it all down.
Well, for instance, number 3 here, parabolais,
Yeah.
that is a compound. Para means alongside of, and bolais means it's from balo,
We're back on
meaning to
homework.
throw.
Okay. Yeah, you're on the homework now. Okay.
But this is just incidental information. We're doing parsing right now, so let's go to number 2. Thalasan. See the accent on the first syllable. Thalasan.
Can I give that a shot?
Yes, please do.
Thalasan, case accusative,
Yes,
and that would be singular.
yes.
It's feminine
Yes.
noun.
Mhm.
Lexical form would be thalassa,
Hmm.
and meaning the sea or a sea.
Yes. Now give me the genitive of that and the article that goes with it.
Okay. Genitive would be sorry. Oh gosh. I know it's thalassa, so I'm trying to remember
No, it's ace. It goes to Ada.
it does. Oh,
Yes,
in genitive. Okay, I'm sorry. Thalassace. So it'd be taste thalassace. Is that right?
Yeah, if you put the article in that same case, but the lexical form. We would
Oh, you're asking for the genitive ending. I'm
yeah.
sorry. I didn't understand what you're asking for. Oh yeah, no. So the article would be hey,
That's right.
and then the genitive ending is ace.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Those 3 bits of information are included in the lexical form.
Got it. Okay.
And that's because that's that rule about it.
Yeah, if the second last letter is, and I can't remember how it
Yeah,
was, but it's best, I think, just to memorize the lexical form.
Yeah, the lexical form, and then when we see the genitive, we'll recognize that it
That's
is.
right.
Yeah.
Third one, parabolais. Somebody feel comfortable doing that one?
Sure. So I'd say that's dative, plural and feminine.
Right.
So it's hey.
Yes.
The lexical form is, sorry, we're parabole, and the genitive then would be parabolais.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And the inflected meaning?
It's a parable.
Yeah.
Now,
that's.
is it also the mathematical term? is there a different term?
Oh, a parabola.
Is it a
uh,
different term or is this from the same Greek?
I think it's derived from this
I think
word.
the parable is
Right.
derived from the
Yep.
same word.
Yeah,
Parabolic.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all the same. All right.
But a parable is a something that's thrown alongside of. Para is alongside of, and bole is to throw.
So there's a point, and then it's like kind of going along with the point.
Yeah.
Is that kind of
Yeah, Jesus was a master at telling stories. He put a practical or a well-known situation alongside a spiritual truth to explain what that spiritual truth
Right.
was.
I think I would associate the word parallel
Yeah.
more with parable. But and I've read about this before, like in the geometric, like a parabolic flight. I don't remember exactly why it's connected, but it's similar concept, like going alongside.
Well, I was a math major and I really liked plane geometry.
Yeah.
And we studied all the conic sections, and parabola was one of them.
Right.
But I can't really tell you what the connection is between a parabola, mathematical figure, and this word.
And now I can't talk. A parabola approaches but never connects.
Yeah.
I mean, so a parabola approaches, a parabolic means it's approaching a thing.
Like a space.
Well, you're thinking of a hyperbola, I
Well,
think.
okay,
Hyperbola,
parabola.
yeah, it's got two
Well,
asymptotes, and they
sure,
approach, but
but
they never touch.
Well, all right,
Right.
but
right?
okay. So it is. What does a parabola do? Is
A
it not?
quadratic.
Does it actually reach
parabola-
a vertical?
Does it what?
So a parabola, does it not become hyperbolic?
No, they're
Does
two
not.
distinct.
Okay, well, I remember.
If you take a plane and slice a cone, if you slice it perpendicular to the axis of the cone, it becomes a circle. If you slice it at an angle, but not too steep of an angle to where it doesn't, see, a cone is both conic above and conic below.
All right.
If it slices less at an angle less than the angle of the cone, it will give you an ellipse. If you
Right.
slice it parallel with the angle of the cone, it becomes a parabola.
Okay.
If you slice it at an angle greater than the angle of the cone, it becomes a hyperbola, and it will have two sections. Something kind of interesting, if you have a darkened room and a table lamp, the light bulb in that lamp shining through the circular opening to against the wall will form a hyperbola. The shadow of it will do that. Anyway, let's just
Okay.
off the subject, but I'm going to look up and find out what connection the parabola has with a parable.
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
Number 4, hamartion. Somebody want that one? I'll take it. Genitive, plural, feminine. Lexical form, hamartia, hamartias, he. And the key word of the sins. Now I put the in there in parentheses because it's, you could say of sins or of the sins. In the Greek prepositional phrase, now this is not a preposition, I understand that, but quite often prepositional phrases imply the definite article. But when we get more context, we'll be able to figure it out. Number 5, thanato, iota subscript. Does that suggest anything?
Dative singular.
Yes, and
It's
gender? Masculine, yeah. What's the lexical form?
Thanatos.
Right.
And the genitive would be,
Ooh,
Right,
Thana
two. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
article,
Ah,
and the the inflected meaning,
so being dative, it would be like to or from death.
two or four,
A for, right,
Yeah.
sorry.
okay? We use, see the rough breathing there on that diphthong? The oos ending tells you something, doesn't it?
Mhm.
What is it?
Accusative plural,
Right. And the gender,
or masculine.
right? The lexical form?
Huyu,
No,
no, sorry, huyas.
right? Generative?
Um,
You had
that'd be huyu.
the use, yeah,
And ha
Right.
is the article, and it would be this is sons
Right.
as the object.
that's the object, right? Good.
Carl, can I ask you?
Of
I'm
course.
sort of catching up on some of this stuff.
That's all right.
So the two vowels, the breathing mark applies at the beginning of the sound. Is that
Oh,
what you were saying?
are you talking about the diphthong there?
Yes,
Yeah,
Yes.
because you said
When you have a
We-
diphthong, let me give you a little review on diphthongs. To qualify as a diphthong in Greek, the second letter has to be either an upsilon or an iota. If it's not one of those, then it's not a diphthong. It's two separate vowels, and
that are
each one
pronounced
is
separately.
pronounced separately.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got upsilon, and no, iota is a second vowel, so it is a diphthong. And the accent, excuse me, the breathing for a diphthong always goes over the second letter.
Okay. Of course.
And if you have an accent on that diphthong, it too would go over the second letter.
Okay.
We don't have an accent on that. All right.
Okay.
Number 7. Somebody want to pronounce that?
Excuse me, ecclesia and
Exousion.
exousion.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a sick
It's
thing.
not a key, it's a xi.
Exi-
So it's like our X.
exousion.
Mhm.
Yeah. Accusative, singular, feminine,
Right,
and it's exousia.
right.
In this case, it's hey.
Yeah,
The
but the
G-
genitive
Oh
singular.
no. So I'm not sure. I think it's the
I need to go back and memorize all this gentleman.
Would it help
genitive
to
is I'm sorry, I'm trying to bring that up in my head.
Yeah.
S.
Yeah, right. Exousias.
S.
Mhm.
Yeah. Exousias.
And the inflected meaning?
The
Yeah, you got it.
yeah, it's the object, so it's power or the power or
Right,
the
mhm.
authority. Yeah.
Right, good. Number 8, uranon. I'll take that one. Genitive plural masculine of uranos, uranu, ha.
Can I take a stab at the inflected me? I mean, that isn't Urano heaven or the heavens.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Or sky.
So this would be two or four.
No,
Oh,
the
sorry,
key
it's
word,
genitive. I'm
right,
sorry.
genitive.
Of the heavens.
Yes. Mhm.
Why is it not Uranos or Uranos?
Uranos is
I'm-
the masculine singular
Nominative.
nominative.
Well, I thought you
yeah.
were giving the lexical form. I'm sorry.
Uranos is the lexical form.
Okay, I thought you said
Ura-
Uranu.
Uranu is genitive.
Oh, I'm
Ooh.
sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't. I was not hearing
Uranos.
what you said.
Ooh, if you
Yes.
just,
Yes,
okay,
I follow you
ha.
now.
I gave the whole word.
You're looking.
No, I was just thinking of that. Is the name of the planet Uranus have come
Yes.
from this?
Yes, it does. Came from this. Yeah. Uranus.
Really?
hmm
Suddenly that planet's name makes.
It means that guy.
Well, sky is probably a lesser used
Heavens.
translation.
Heavens.
Heavens, yeah.
Heaven, space.
Mhm.
Huh.
Good observation. Number 9. Here you've got a diphthong with both the breathing and the accent on the second vowel. oiku, oiku. Somebody want that one?
Sure, I can do it if you
Mhm.
like. It is genitive,
Yes.
singular masculine.
Right?
The lexical is oikos.
Mhm.
The genitive would be,
What you got there?
yeah,
Oiku.
well, yeah, that's right. That. And I'm sorry, it's ha is the
Mhm.
article. The meaning is it's of the house or of home, or of the house or of the home.
Yeah. Mhm. Or of a house.
Well,
Number-
okay.
Number 10, achloi. See, there's a key which looks to us like an X, but it's a key. It's kind of a guttural German sounding key. It's, what's that?
Alkaloid?
Achloi.
Achloi.
The oi ending tells me it's masculine plural, and it's nominative.
Right.
The lexical form is achlas, achlu, ha, and since it's nominative, it's the subject, crowds or multitudes.
The genitive was u, correct?
That's right.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
about the vocabulary here? Because we have another word. It's very similar. What is it? And we had, that means people or crowds. Is the
Laos.
yes.
Yes.
And they seem like somehow they're related in their sounds almost, but sort of when thinking about this, is it just a matter of degree? Like some people, as many as whatever a crowd is, and this is like way more than that. Like so many you can't count them.
I'm not sure if the distinction is between the quantity of people.
Okay.
I can't really give you a good answer
Well,
without looking up
that's all
something.
right. I didn't know if you.
the
We'll
best
find out
way
in
to-
context.
Best way to learn about that is to find verses
We'll find
that use
verses,
it.
how it's used.
Okay. Warm-up section. Let's read together slowly. En to euangelio, in the gospel.
And they could use, I think, yeah.
Now, this is a preposition, en. It means in. Now, I'd like to
Takes
open
the
the book.
dative. in.
Yes, it does. And always takes a dative. It doesn't
Right.
take any other case. Let's open the book to that nifty little diagram he gave of a spatial relationship of prepositions.
Really? Where's that?
Um,
Oh,
Page
from
75.
Or
I turned to it.
Yeah. Let's think about this for a minute. And is inside the circle. It's a stationary thing. It doesn't talk about movement. Compare it to ace. That's outside on the left there. It's approaching and moving until it gets in.
So that would be like into.
Yes.
Mhm.
Now that's the basic meaning. Now, there are many times when you would not translate ace as into. You got to be careful to not force the basic meaning into every verse you translate. But these two, ace and an, by the time of Koine, it became almost interchangeable, those words.
Which
Ace and an. Originally, ace implied movement, and the destination was in.
That actually raises a question, and this is not. You can shut this down. It's too much of a tangent. But back in chapter 7, in one of the exercises, you had translated "en tais cardiais."
In the house, in the heart.
Yeah, and then it's
In hearts.
emon. So it's cardiais emon. So in our hearts, and you had that as into. For n. So there are times you translate n into or.
I believe that's true.
Okay.
I have to see some verses that use that. But
That seems to me more or less the way we function in modern English because we tend to use in and into rather interchangeably an awful lot of.
I think we do, yeah.
This, I don't know if you want to see the verse, but
So
actually.
in the glyph,
Okay,
It's better.
in the glyph, he gave us on for,
yes.
On
which
and
is
And
not,
can be translated on.
but not for, but for ace, he didn't give that.
No. Here's an example of a very common use of ace, meaning in, when we say we believe in Christ. The vast majority of times it's ace Christo, into Christ, but we wouldn't translate it that way.
Right.
It doesn't imply movement. It's probably became that way through common usage.
Yeah. The same way we have in English where we kind of.
Well, we say also believe on
Abuse the
Christ.
words
Yeah,
from their original meaning.
yeah. You know, prepositions are difficult in most
imprecise.
languages to pin down the exact meaning. If you talk to a Chinese person, for instance, or any non-English speaker, they have a lot of trouble with our English prepositions.
Sure.
Why do
Yeah,
we
and-
say at home
And my
instead of,
wife always complains about English prepositions, and I point out to her that I have just as much trouble with Russian, German, and Spanish prepositions.
yeah,
Prepositions are very, in one sense, they're very structured in most languages, where most cases, a particular object has to go with a specific
Yeah.
preposition, and you can't change it.
The
Then it's usually
usage.
arbitrary what goes with what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the usage is pretty standard, and yet it doesn't have any definite logic.
yeah.
Yeah, it's irregular.
Right.
Yeah, it's arbitrary.
Regularly.
It's probably-
One of the very,
So translating becomes kind of, we really probably shouldn't be too exacting in our understanding of the translation. As you said, in Christ, into Christ, but I want to say is, if I believe in Christ, did I not move into the position of
yes,
believing in him?
you got
So is
there.
there any real difference,
Well, maybe not.
right?
Maybe when a person first
Well,
believes in Christ, he had to come from a position away from Christ.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how it got to be that way.
And is there any, I mean, and is it not something I have to continue to do? It is action as well as a
Well, once
position.
we're in Christ, we never get removed.
That's a different question,
Yeah.
because you said believe in.
Just thinking, this is making me wonder which preposition Jesus chose to use when he was talking about the vines and the branches.
Well, it's
We
not
could check
Greek.
it out, but
Yeah.
I'd like to reserve that for another
Okay.
discussion.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, let's leave this open while we're studying prepositions. Number beta. Reading together. Ace,
Ace,
tain,
tain,
oikion. Somebody want to stab at that?
Into the house.
Yes, yes.
Not to beat a dead horse, but just
Okay.
on the in and into, I can definitely think of some circumstances where you would say, like, I lost my keys, where were they? You'd say they were in the drawer. You wouldn't say they were into the drawer,
Right.
but you
Right,
might say,
right.
where did
Yeah.
you put them? I put them, you might say I put them into the drawer, although that might sound a little bit awkward. So I just wonder if the words just don't translate perfectly the same, right?
Yeah.
Like into Christ. I forgot what word you used, like maybe motion toward
Yeah,
or
well,
like it. I think it makes sense, but it still wouldn't make sense in English, right? If the ace,
well, here, this one we
Yeah.
just translated, ace, tain, oikion, that implies movement.
into the
Mhm.
house,
Yeah.
like where did
Yeah.
they go? Into the house.
Yes. Number gamma. Meta tu Ioannou.
With John.
With John, yes. Meta with the genitive means with, but meta could take another case, actually two others. With the accusative, it means after, and with the dative, it means beside.
Well, he didn't give us the dative in the,
No,
vocab
he
section
didn't.
here.
He did.
No, but if you look in the
That's okay.
lexicon in the back of the book,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
it's got three. There are, let's see, the ones that can take three cases are epi, para. It looks like that's it. Okay. Number delta, chi, ain, kurios, meta, yosef. Somebody want that one?
Sure.
Ain means was.
Sure.
Remember,
and
that's that verb.
That's
It's a
oh,
special
amen.
verb that we're
Amen.
learning out of sequence.
Mhm.
Sure.
It's-
I'll let me do it.
Yes, please.
And the Lord was with Joseph.
Very good. It comes from Genesis 39. That's a very
That's the
important
subject right there.
verse, I think. Okay, number epsilon. Rough breathing on that first diphthong, and see it has the accent and the breathing on the second letter of the diphthong. Hutas, yes. Estin, ha, wias, tu, theu. Now, estin is that verb that we learned the paradigm of this chapter. That's he, she, or it is.
Is it? This is the Son of God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. I had a note here to see
Yeah.
8:15.
And it's interesting, because that could have been done with it. Couldn't that have been done with the genitive case? I'm sorry, I meant.
This is God's son.
I mean, right? It uses a specific preposition. I mean, it doesn't.
Where?
No, it doesn't.
No.
I'm sorry. No, it doesn't either.
It
I'm
just
sorry. This
uses
is
the
just use
article.
the genitive article. Never mind.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I
It is
want
what
to
it's
talk
doing.
about something here. 8:15 on page 73. This is an important paragraph. Do you remember in chapter 6, the exegetical insight he talked about from John 1:1? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That third phrase, the Word was God. He talked about a predicate nominative and a subject linked together with the equated verb is. Well, how do you know which one is the subject and which one is the predicate nominative?
There's a order of precedence.
Yes,
right?
and this is how I didn't know that until this edition of the book. This is a very important. He says in chapter 6, he said the subject is the one that has the article, but it was theos ein ha logos. The Word was God. So ha logos is not in the normal position that English has.
Right.
Instead, they put the predicate nominative in the position of first for emphasis, because it emphasizes the quality of godliness. The Word was God.
Right, but we know that the Word is the subject.
Because it has the article and the
articular noun.
Yes,
Okay.
it's an articular noun. However, he amplifies this. You can't always assume that the one that has the article is the subject.
Where are you reading from?
I'm in 8:15, page 73. I want to read this paragraph
I
here.
see what you're getting.
Predicate nominative. The second function of the nominative case is the predicate nominative. Footnote 5, grammatically, the predicate is the verb and everything that follows it. It is what is left when you remove the subject and its modifiers. Okay, just as in English, a noun that follows a me is not receiving the action from the verb. That's because the type of verb it is a an intransitive verb. It does not transfer the action to the object. Amy is an intransitive, also an equating verb, or sometimes they call it a coupling verb, copulative verb,
A linking verb.
linking verb, or coupling verb. Yeah, but either way, it's intransitive, takes a predicate nominative instead of a direct object. Amy is not receiving the action from the verb, but rather is telling you something about the subject. Footnote 6. The verb to be is called an equative verb in that it draws an equal sign between the subject and the predicate nominative. Therefore, the word is in the nominative case and not in the accusative.
Both words are.
Mhm.
Theos
That's
and
right.
Kurios.
That's right. But in this case, the one with the article, Theos, God, is Lord.
So if that had been Theos estin ha kurios, we would translate it, the Lord is God.
I think that's right. Yes.
Put the article
Yes.
at curious.
Right.
Yeah. Notice that in this sentence, both the first and last words are in the nominative case. Context will make clear which is the subject and which is the predicate. Footnote 7. The sentence could also be written kurios estin theos, what you just said.
Oh,
The article also is
Okay.
indicating the subject.
I think he's just saying the syntax is
Yeah.
flexible.
So,
However, there's an order of precedence. If the word is a pronoun, it's probably the subject. In other words, autos estin kurios.
Mhm.
He is Lord.
Mhm.
If it is an articular, yes, question.
No, I was just looking at this next one. If it is an articulate noun or a proper name, then it's probably the subject. But then a lot of the time in the Hebrew, Yahweh gets translated as Kyrios, I would think, in the Septuagint, right?
Yeah, that's
So how would you know if it's saying Lord or Yahweh?
I don't know if you can go backwards to determine that from Greek to Hebrew.
by looking at the
I don't
Hebrew.
know
Yeah,
enough about
probably.
Hebrew to answer
Okay.
that.
In the Hebrew, it was actually the tetragram, but
Or maybe they marked it in the Septuagint in some way.
I don't know
wonder.
it. I don't know what they did
Yeah,
in
it's a
Septuagint,
whole
but
question.
chances are they marked it in a way that's clear, or they knew it by verbal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's not a doubt in our English translations.
because
we have it all caps.
Right.
Right, but then.
But
then when-
going back to the Hebrew, it was the actual name Yahweh.
Right,
But there were also other names for deity, Adonai.
yeah.
which is
Yeah.
like Lord.
El Shaddai, El
And- Okay, third point here. If there is a pronoun and also an articular noun or proper name, the pronoun is probably the subject. So the pronoun trumps all of them,
Mhm.
it seems to me. If there is a pronoun,
Articular noun, that just means
it
there's an
has the
article.
article.
And
Yeah,
that kind of makes sense because a pronoun is by nature less precise. And so if you use a pronoun and then equate it with something, it makes sense. that
yeah,
you're
it's telling you
providing more
further information because the pronoun doesn't give you much information.
Right.
Right.
So in
Every
this,
pronoun has to have an antecedent. So.
Yes, it does.
somewhere in the text. I
Uh,
suppose.
It could be a postcedent as well.
True.
He is wise who loves God. The phrase "who loves God" is the antecedent of he.
Mhm.
Excuse me, it's a postcedent of he.
Mhm.
One more question that I just can't remember.
Yeah.
Is the article always right before the noun? Is that an area where the word order can be counted on?
Yes, if you have an article, but it might not be immediately before the noun. You might have intervening words.
Okay.
But I don't know that it's ever after the noun that
Only-
it modifies.
Only
well-
post positives as far as we've come across. Are there other things?
Yes, there are other things. There are
okay.
some adjectives that are
Okay.
that follow the noun they modify.
Okay. Or do you mean?
I'm confused because he asked if the article would have anything intervening between it and the noun. So post positives, but would there be an adverb that would be between the two?
No, not an adverb,
An
adjective.
between the two.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're gonna have ha adjective.
Yeah. We have
Right.
adjectives are
So-
next chapter.
Even in English, if
got
you
it.
said
Okay.
the tall man, there's a word in between.
That's right.
the and
Mhm.
man, so
So-
it'd be a similar construction.
Yes, but
This-
there's other factors which we're going to get next chapter, and we'll have to wait.
Understood.
So this is not surprising. I mean, as an English speaking person, this rule follows along with the way I would expect it to.
I think so.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not finding anything surprising here.
Well,
Yeah.
one thing that is
Explicit
surprising
and
is
knowledge are different things.
No, it's good. It's good to point it out. It's just
I'm
not.
not sure
it's-
if you want to trust it, right?
No,
It's like-
I'm glad he gives us the rule, but this sentence, ha theos, est and kyrios. If you remove the ha, you don't really know what it means.
true. That you could have an anarthrous. That's the other term, Matt.
Mm.
Anarthrous means no article.
Mm.
Articular means there is an article.
Can I bring it back to the workbook real quick, Carl?
Okay,
So in epsilon of the warm up,
Yeah.
we had hutas estin. So hutas, is that considered a pronoun in this context?
That's a demonstrative adjective.
But it's functioning as the subject of this sentence, is it
Yes.
not?
This,
Okay.
There's two different demonstrative pronouns and adjectives function very similarly.
Okay.
Um,
Mhm.
That's one of the two demonstrative pronouns. The other one is a kanos.
So
This is a near demonstrative.
Mhm.
A kanos, that is a far demonstrative.
Got it. So in this context, it follows that rule from 8.15 perfectly, because it's this
Yeah.
pronoun, and then we have an articular noun following, and the pronoun is the subject. And the articular
That's
noun
correct.
is the
And
predicate
the
noun.
huios is not the subject. It's
Right.
the predicate noun. That's a good point. I'm glad you brought it out.
so it,
Cool. Thank you.
all right. I mean, in the vocabulary, say this, hutas is an adjective, but it's acting as a pronoun.
I would say it
Okay.
the other way around. It's a pronoun acting as an adjective. They're,
Or sometimes.
they're almost.
Okay, I mean, I may have written this down wrong, but I was writing down what I got from something that called this an adjective. So we would say this pencil, this,
Yeah, it's
phone.
like an adjective, but it's more like a pronoun.
I mean, but in English, it does the same thing. It
Yeah.
does exactly the same thing.
No, so Dad, he didn't call it an adjective. He said as an adjective, it means this. But he didn't say that the word is an adjective.
Where are you reading?
I'm sorry.
Okay, fair enough.
that's what he
is
was
it?
trying
What
to
is it when
communicate.
it's not an adjective? And
A
Okay.
pronoun.
Does it
That's
say-
what he's
Yeah.
saying.
well, you're
You can have the sentence, this is good. Well,
okay. That's fine.
hutas is not modifying anything. It's just.
I see
functioning.
that. That's what it's doing. It's just okay.
It's almost like what,
We're being
Mhm.
fed applesauce, and what we know how to eat. When we think about eating apples, and we're getting applesauce. So it's
I feel like there's a invisible finger pointing. when you see
Yeah.
This.
It's,
yeah.
in fact, I read this somewhere. In ancient Greek, they didn't have the article. They used a demonstrative pronoun
Hmm.
to act as the article. It's kind of like pointing your finger. This or that.
Mhm.
And it's very similar to an article. It developed into a separate word. is the article. All right, where were we? Number zeta. Theoi este. Este, not este.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
epsilon,
Este.
not an eta. Now that esta is a form of a me. Remember we learned the on page 72, 8.12, we learned the paradigm of the verb a me, very common verb. Este is second person plural. You plural are.
Oh, this is that very strange verse that he quotes to
Yes.
them. You are gods.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
It's referring to Psalm 82:6. In the context of Psalm 82:6, talks about the judges in Israel. They were called gods.
Hmm. Oh.
You want to read it?
Where from?
Psalm 82:6.
Oh, right. It's
Is
like,
that-
sure. I said, you, this is New King James Version.
Okay.
I said, you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High.
And then Jesus quoted that in John 10:34.
Right. I don't have John 10, sorry.
Okay. But look at the Greek here. You don't have an article.
Mm-hmm.
So that rule about the pronoun taking precedence for the subject would come into play here, but the you is part of the verb.
Right, and it trails, but it would have to be the subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you is the subject and theo is the predicate nominative. Okay. Number 8. Theos agape estin. Oh, by the way, he did mention when we learned this paradigm of a me that the accent is sometimes lost to the previous word. It's called an enclitic. I'm reading from 812 on page 72. Except for a, the second person singular, the forms of a me are enclitic, which means they push their accent back on the previous word. They will normally not have an accent of their own. But here's a case. Estin, in number 8, does keep its accent. It doesn't push it back. So, theos agape estin. Where is the subject in that?
Theos.
That's right. Want to translate it?
God is love.
Right. Very good. Well, we finished that section earlier than I thought we would. We could go on, or, I mean, what's your pleasure? Do you want to go farther and work on it together? Now, what I did,
Go to the bottom
yeah.
here.
Okay. What I did just for my own sake, I diagrammed these sentences, at least some of them, because I like diagramming to help me visualize the structure of the sentence. And if you have what I handed you for the handout last week or maybe the week before, you'll have those diagrams. I'll do number 1. Erkatai ace oikon. Erkatai means he, sure it comes. He gives us that. And ace oikon into the house. Now, he told us in the textbook here that you're allowed to you translate the article, even though it's not there in the Greek, in a prepositional phrase. Let me find where he says that. Do you remember reading that when we read it together?
I think so, yes. You can supply that.
Yeah, you can supply the article in a prepositional phrase
Yeah.
if it's not there.
Because, yes,
It's
I
almost
can't,
like the article was
That's-
dropped.
yeah,
Is that the idea?
that reminds me, Sherry and I have been watching this series called All Creatures Great and Small
Yeah, on PBS.
on PBS. And those Highland, what are they, Scottish Highlanders? They often say, I'm going in-house
Oh.
or something like that. They omit the article. It's just a peculiarity of their speech. And the Greeks do that too, but we would put it in there. Right. No, I did the diagramming, the horizontal. I didn't want to bring out the marker board, but most prepositional phrases are adverbial. What that means is they modify the verb, not the subject. So this prepositional phrase, I put it under the verb. Into the house describes where he came.
Right.
Okay, number 2, let's read it together. Ex eilthen, ex autu, footnote 1. Notice the repetition of the preposition following the compound verb. Okay, the compound verb is ex eilthen. Eilthen means he came, he, she, or it came. But
Yeah.
ex eilthen means he, she, or it came out.
so it's already in there.
Yes, it's a compound verb. Compounding the preposition ex with the verb eilthen.
Is that a proper pronoun then?
Yes, it is.
What?
It's one on this list.
It seemed, am I wrong? Because autu is the genitive pronoun,
Right.
so
Mhm.
it's just he came out. I mean, it seems like the
No.
whole sentence is contained.
No,
in the
autu is not
He came.
not nominative.
What?
It's genitive.
What?
He came out of him.
Oh, genitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the times when Jesus cast a demon
From
out.
I'm sorry,
Out.
I was.
Out from him.
That
Yeah.
makes more sense.
Of
Thank
him,
you.
came out from him, or
It's-
out of him.
Of him.
But
yeah.
it already says came out.
Yes, but now
So
the footnote tells you, notice the repetition of the preposition following the compound verb. This is considered good Greek, but in your translation, you would not repeat the preposition.
right.
So you don't say he came out,
Out of.
He came
out
out
of him.
Out of.
Now, I didn't say, it should be it came out of
Right.
him, not
Yeah,
he,
yeah.
Okay.
because
Or
A
the
demon.
unclean spirits don't have a gender.
that's right, spirits. Yeah, the word for spirit is pneumati, or pneumatos.
Oh,
Okay.
Pneuma, it means wind or breath.
yeah, I was gonna say, pneuma was what I was thinking.
Yeah, but in Greek, in English, we have a silent P, but in Greek, it's pronounced
Oh.
pneuma.
pneu-
Yeah, consonant clusters is what it's called. And there are some very weird consonant clusters in Greek. For instance, PH, TH together, the phi and the theta. Yeah, it's like F and TH together. Yeah. Do you remember the
That's a great one to spit.
medicine called phenolphthalein?
Yeah,
That's PHTH.
yeah.
Phenol.
No, PHE.
Well, that's a syllable in there, I thought.
Or diphtheria.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Dip-
PHTH.
diphtheria.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
a hard stop there.
We did
Yeah.
diphtheria.
Yeah.
But,
But sometimes you have the PHTH at the beginning of the word. And it's real hard to
Do
pronounce.
those
Hmm?
always have to be in separate syllables? Is there a syllable divided between them?
No,
no,
it's a consonant cluster.
yeah,
He talked about that at the beginning of the, when we were learning the alphabet.
yeah.
It was, I think, one of those weeks when I wasn't here.
Could be.
Yeah.
All right. Are you comfortable with that second one yet? He came out of him, or it came out of him. Yeah, excuse me.
This preposition isn't
It's
selected
hard to
then.
do on the fly.
Yeah, well, I know it is, Dave, but
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
help you with it.
Well, but I'm trying, part of this is I'll have to go home and do it. This
Okay.
is how we really learn, I think, is
Yeah.
in the exercise.
All right, then.
But
Let's,
okay.
Let's take a break from that. Let
you
you
just
get,
have to
can-
give us time to do them.
yeah, how much do you think you can get all the rest of the chapter done in 1 week?
Well, sure. I mean, it's,
All 20?
I'm just saying if we do them here and we have 2 seconds to do them, it doesn't hardly give us time. At least not me
Yeah,
to read this, do the translation work and
Okay.
answer the
I
question.
agree.
If you give us 2 minutes, I think we can probably work through it.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. The
Oh,
speed at which
did
we're
you
trying
wanna
to
just
do them
take
here
a
in the class.
second
Yeah, I mean, we
ahead
just
of-
need enough time to work through it. That's all
Okay.
I'm suggesting.
So like maybe
Carl.
even now we could work on the next
You
one.
want to
and then-
do? a few
Yeah,
of
like
them
if we
together?
look at 3
Okay.
and then think about it a minute.
Did we get number 1?
Yeah, those
to
were
your
really short.
satisfaction?
Those were really short.
One and
Okay.
two.
Now
Oh,
we
you want
have
to
a
do
bunch.
number 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Sure.
Can I talk through it and give you time to write it down? Is that what you want to do?
Well, I think what I prefer is the time to look at it, look
Okay,
up the word, actually do the work.
okay.
Am I the only one that learns that way?
No, let's
Yeah.
do it. Okay, doxon. You know what that word is?
Sure, that's glory.
Glory. And the ending on, what is that?
That's singular accusative.
Yes,
So we have.
feminine.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not the subject. It's a direct object.
Right.
Let's find the subject first.
Oh,
It's
probably
implied.
implied in the
I
verb.
think it's
Yes,
the implied in the
lambano
verb.
means I receive. Okay, so subject is I.
Yeah.
Now, careful here. You've got in front of the verb, you've got an oo. What is an oo? This is one we need to get familiar with.
Negation.
It's negation,
Mm.
not.
So I do.
Yeah,
not.
I do. You gotta, in English, you want to supply the word do to make a good translation.
Right.
I do not.
Rather than I receive. Well, so I
I
guess
can
like
say I
NK
receive not.
Right. I
That's
feel like
King-
NKJV or King James
Yeah,
might
that's
do
the
that.
King
ooh.
James does.
I
It's the
receive
ooh or the
not
ooh.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
the ooh, the oof, or the oof.
That
Yeah.
that's very literal translation, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah.
but let's
All
let's
right.
put a do in there. I
Okay.
do not
not
receive. Are we okay now?
Sure.
Okay, what do I not receive? I want a direct object.
So we have. Well,
It's gonna
glory.
be the
Glory.
glory, yeah.
I do not receive glory. Now we've got a
have
prepositional phrase, para anthropon.
Seems to be genitive, right?
Yes.
So
What, para?
para.
can I have-
Well, look
where's
at your
that at?
look at
Sorry
your
for-
listing here.
Okay.
I have to
genitive.
always cheat and look at the
I
list.
got it.
Para
What the
genitive
genitive
is
means
from.
from.
I do not. Oh, okay, got this.
Okay, okay, what you got?
I do not receive glory from men.
That's right. Mhm.
Okay, cool.
You feel good about it?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
nice way to
You
just-
want to do number 4 together?
Sure, that's fine. It's
Okay.
quicker than me doing them at home where I'm looking every single thing up because you're prompting us with what.
Okay, okay, let's read it together.
Yeah.
Elalesin, ha Iesus, and parabolais, toi
Right.
achois. Okay. Where's our subject?
Jesus.
Good.
Right.
What's that mean?
Jesus.
Jesus. Okay, put it down. Jesus. Then we want a verb.
Well, we have he, she, it spoke. So
Okay.
elalesen.
Yeah. Jesus
Lawless.
spoke.
In
Okay.
And
You're getting it now.
And
And what?
with, and that's with
parables.
In parables.
a genitive plural, right?
That's
Or is
dative plural.
that's dative
Yeah.
plural?
And always takes a dative. It doesn't take
Right.
any other case.
Okay.
I'm just,
I
I mean, I just recognize that one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
sure.
Yeah. Jesus spoke in parables. Now, what is this? Tois
Does and always
aklois?
take the dative? Is that correct? Oh,
Yes.
dative, right? Not
Okay,
dative.
that's the
I'm
word.
sorry. I flipped it
Voice
in, but
is crowds.
You get used to it. Yeah.
Voice is crowds.
Yes.
To the
To the
crowds.
crowds. There you go.
spoke.
Keyword
Where's the
two.
two from?
Keyword two.
Yeah, the keyword to the dative. Yeah.
Terrible.
That works.
Because it's toys.
You're right. Yeah.
Multitudes.
Multitudes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
multitudes. Yeah,
Crowds or multitudes.
yeah. Okay.
Because it's tois achlois,
Mhm.
and that's dative plural, so it's
That's
to the
right.
multitudes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Are you feeling comfortable with
Jesus.
that?
I'm good. I'm good, Carl.
Okay.
You don't have to
You
keep
want to do
checking.
one more?
You know, I'll say if there's a problem. We're doing good.
Okay,
Sure,
together.
keep going.
Kai
Kai.
tids on toe.
Baptizanto. Baptizo.
Makes
About
sense.
Hoop out to
Out to and
ento Jordane.
Done.
Jordane.
Done.
There's no J in Greek, so they gotta approximate it
I'm
with the
guessing that's
iota.
Right.
Jordan?
Yes, the
Jordane?
Jordan River.
And
Okay.
so we have Kai, so that would be like and at the beginning. of our
Yeah,
subject.
and
So what's our subject?
well,
Oh.
he gives it to us.
They were being baptized.
Yeah,
It's
and
the
they were being
they.
baptized. Hoop out to, footnote 2. Out to means his when it is showing possession. When it is the object of a preposition, it means him.
Oh.
So
Wait a minute.
Two
this
is-
out to, the genitive ending there doesn't mean of him.
Okay.
It's genitive because the preposition requires the genitive.
Okay, yeah, right,
I'm trying to
right,
find it. Where's who?
By him.
Hoop. Now that's an elision. Remember,
right.
it could be hoop, it could be hoopo, hoop, or hoof, depending on the
right.
next
What does that
letter.
word mean?
Trying to find
Gotta
that
find
word again.
Oh, it's in your list here.
Yeah, it's
No?
in the list, it's in the bottom.
Okay. We'll use
Is
the
that
list.
who fair?
Football under?
Hooper is,
Oh,
Fair.
like hyper.
yes, hyper.
What?
By the way, the upsilon, when you transliterate it into English, becomes a Y.
Hupo.
So that's hyper
see.
or hypo.
So
It's the-
Hyperactive.
it's actually
Yeah,
Says it the,
hupo,
sorry, I'm
right? Not hupo.
Is it hoopo we're talking about?
hoopo, yeah,
Under,
under, right.
or is it?
But
wait a
we're
minute,
in
Well,
genitive,
under
not
if it's
accusative.
No, it's
accusative,
genitive, so it's by?
by, yeah,
Right. By
By.
him. So they
yeah, by him in the Jordan,
and in the Jordan, right? And they were being baptized by him in the Jordan.
right. But did you catch that
Yeah.
what happened there with footnote 2? He's saying it's genitive, not to show
Yes.
possession,
Yeah,
but it's genitive to make the
right.
hoop mean by.
He's reminding us of the rules.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, that's what they taught us in the chapter. He's just reminding us.
That's
It's not
right.
new information. Okay,
Well, we're half done with this section.
okay.
You want to take it on your own from here?
Up to you.
Well, I'd like to read this Buried Greek Treasure. I just finished it today. And if we have more time, we'll do some more, I guess.
We'll drop that article because it's
One reason I wanted to bring this to us tonight is because the men that meet on Tuesday morning for Bible study are getting into prayer and dependence on God. And that's what the subject of this Buried Greek Treasure is. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll read this to you.
Okay.
Prayerlessness is a declaration of independence from God. I found that quote somewhere, but I don't know where. So, I thought it was probably Spurgeon, yeah. One of the amazing things about the life of Jesus is that though he thought it not robbery to be equal with God, Philippians 2:6, he never did anything independently from his Father. Even when strongly tempted, Jesus refused to exercise the independent use of his divine attributes for his own purposes. And I list several references there. He said, I do always those things that please him. We who claim the name of Christ are instructed to walk even as he walked. 1 John 2:6. Christ left us an example that we should follow his steps. Let this mind or attitude be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, literally emptied himself, and took upon himself the form of a servant or bondslave. Isn't it obvious from these and many other scriptures that we Christians should be characterized by an attitude of trust and dependence on the one of whom it is said, he abides faithful, he cannot deny himself. Prayer is one of the most basic areas of a believer's life in which to exercise trust, dependence, or faith in God. We know that without faith it's impossible to please him, and James cautions his readers to ask in faith without any doubting, for the one who doubts is like the surf of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For that man ought not to expect that he will receive anything from the Lord. The word doubt that James uses to describe a vacillating faith is translated waver by Paul in Romans 4:20 and 21. He did not waver in unbelief, but grew strong in faith, giving glory to God and being fully persuaded or assured that what God had promised, he was able also to perform. The world extols the merits of self-sufficiency, self-reliance, self-image, self-advancement, self-assertion, and self-confidence. At the same time, it demeans the Christian virtues of humility, meekness, self-restraint, submission to or dependence on God. This was true in ancient times as well as in these last days. Consider these statements. Come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach unto heaven, and let us make for ourselves a name. That was said by the Babylonians in Genesis 11. Is not this Babylon the great, which I myself have built as a royal residence by the might of my power and for the glory of my majesty? It was Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 4. God, I thank you that I am not like other people. That was the Pharisee in Luke 18. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. As William Henley in his poem Invictus. A personal God means nothing to me, and providence is apt to be absent-minded. That was Thomas Edison who said that. This tendency towards self-sufficiency will be with us as long as we're in this body, because the flesh sets its desire against the spirit and the spirit against the flesh, for these are in opposition to one another. Galatians 5:17. There's a very revealing incident recorded in Mark 9:14-29 concerning this issue of dependence on self versus dependence on God, and it connects directly to prayer. I've got a typo here. The Lord, with Peter, James, and John, was coming down from the Mount of Transfiguration when they saw a large crowd arguing with the other 9 disciples. Not finding him with the 9, he implored them to cast out the demon, but they could not. Jesus answered them, O unbelieving generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you? Jesus shows, as on previous occasions, that he was grieved over his disciples' lack of faith. The disciples had apparently been thinking about their recent experience of being sent out by Jesus to proclaim the gospel in Mark 6. They had been given authority to heal diseases and cast out demons, but this time they were unsuccessful, most likely because they were counting on their previous success rather than relying on God's power. After Jesus questioned him, the boy's father pleaded, "If you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." His words, "if you can," are an expression of doubt in Jesus' ability. Seeing the disciples' failure and had shaken what little confidence he had in Jesus to do this miracle. In reply to the man, Jesus said, "If you can, all things are possible to him who believes." He points to the real problem. It's not whether Jesus can heal the boy, but it is the father able to trust Jesus to do the impossible. The man's answer, "I do believe, help my unbelief," is a cry of desperation. He realizes the weakness of his faith, but begs for God's help. The Greek word boetheo literally means to run to the cry of someone in danger, like a drowning man crying out, "Help." I believe there's a spiritual principle here. Faith is possible only with the help of the one who is the object of that faith. All we who believe in him were given that same help. This principle also applies to obedience. It is God who is at work in you both to will and to work for his good pleasure. Jesus then heals the boy to the great amazement of all the observers. Later, when they were indoors, away from the crowd, the bewildered disciples asked, in effect, "What went wrong? Why couldn't we cast out the demon?" Jesus' answer, "This kind cannot come out by anything but prayer," points out the cause of all spiritual failure, lack of dependence on God's resources, which is tantamount to depending on one's own resources. A.T. Robertson says the words "and fasting" don't appear in the two best manuscripts, Aleph and Beta, or Beth. Also, that it is clearly a late addition to help explain the failure of the disciples. Their real failure was due to their prayerlessness.
Wow, that's interesting.
What application should we make in light of this teaching of Jesus? The most obvious one is to pray believing, but not in the God dishonoring way of the name it and claim it advocates. Faith itself has no merit and is not a work. It's the opposite of doing anything. It's trusting God to do the work on our behalf. That way he gets the glory and we give him thanks. When we pray, what attitude comes through? Self-sufficient or self-promoting attitudes? Little confidence in God? What kind of requests do we make? Small things that might happen anyway? Big things that probably won't happen, and then we can use the disclaimer, "It must not have been his will"? Or is our problem that God doesn't hear from us much at all? Do we have not because we ask not? Do we ask amiss that we might consume it upon our lusts? Let me suggest that we find a quiet place where we can be alone with God for a few minutes to let him examine our hearts. For us to do like the boy's father did, perhaps coming to him and saying, "I do believe, Lord, please help my unbelief." Let him cleanse us before we get together with each other to pray, because a right heart with God is able to express right prayer, which is a declaration of dependence on God. And then I list the 8 places where that word boetheo is used. And I think some of them are pretty interesting. Well, it was a challenging thing for me to say that because I have always been weak in my prayer life. And that says to me that I'm too self-sufficient. And I think this whole life is a training ground for becoming like Christ, and Christ was dependent on his Father.
Yeah. So,
Thank you, Carl.
thanks.
Sure.
I think we all struggle with that.
Hmm?
I think we all struggle with
Yeah,
that.
we do. But can you look back and see some improvement though? We're growing. We're supposed to grow. Just another word of testimony. I think it's been about 3, maybe 4 years now. I was meeting with another group for prayer, just a small group, and somebody, I think I remember who it was, mentioned that he and his wife during their prayer time had been praying about this and that, and they'd seen an answer to that prayer. That statement, I don't think he realized it, convicted me tremendously because I had rarely been praying with my wife.
Hmm.
And I thought, I've been a Christian now for, I think at that time was more than 45 years. And one of the things that attracted Sherry to me was that she thought I was a man of prayer. I had determined before we ever dated, and I had not dated for about 6 years at that point, that if I ever did date again, I was going to start the date with prayer.
Hmm.
As it turns out, Sherry also had not dated for a long time, and she was kind of disillusioned about men in general and Christian men in particular, because they were far from spiritual leaders, and that's what she was wanting, was a spiritual leader if she ever married. And she kind of made a bargain with God. If you want me to be married at all, I want him to be a spiritual leader, and the way I'll know it is if he suggests prayer on the date.
Wow.
And I had determined to do that. But when I got Sherry seated in the car on our first date, I got so nervous I couldn't think what to do. Started to drive away without praying. But then all of a sudden, before I got out of the parking lot, I hit the brakes. We forgot to pray. Mm-hmm. And Sherry told me later, her heart started to sink a little bit. She was getting a little scared. What's this? What's going to happen now?
when you hit the brakes.
Yeah. So, but here it is 45 years later, and I have not set a good example in our family for prayer. We did occasionally when it was an urgent matter, but not regularly. And I felt so guilty about it. I determined that I was going to correct that. I didn't say anything to the guys then, but I came home and I told Sherry, I apologized to her for being, felt hypocritical. But I said, I would like to set a new pattern in our life together. And she was very gracious about it. I think she'd been praying about it.
Maybe so. Wow.
But she didn't say anything about, well, it's about time. Now
God gave her grace.
Yes, she's a very gracious and tactful and sensitive person, much more so than I am. So we began praying every night after supper, and we made a prayer list. And I've been pretty consistent with that for 4 years, maybe. And I told some of the guys later that in that prayer group what had happened, and they were also gracious too. But it was a lesson that was long overdue for learning, and I'm growing. I'm still not pray, it's easy to write stuff like this. It's
Mm.
convicting though.
Mhm.
And my attitude in prayer isn't where it ought to be. I want it to be that way, but you know what it's like, don't you?
Mhm.
Well, yeah. Boy. I admit I'm a bit hit and miss. I mean, it's like we're doing confession time here. Thank you for your honesty. I mean, I find that with the busyness of the schedule, we have I have an 18-year-old, a 20-year-old, and
Yeah.
that
There's a little booklet called The Tyranny of the
to
Urgent.
get together with another person under the same tyranny and constructively pray on a consistent basis is very difficult. And I mean, so when we meet together for dinner, I try to have more than thank you God for the food. And we'll I'll try to think of the day and what's happening and think of what God's will in our life is. And on a consistent basis, that's probably what it comes to, is when we have opportunities, I try to seize them, but it's really hard to be consistent.
Well, you've identified the problem.
Mhm.
You are expressing your heart's desire. You're not trying to cover up and pretend like you've got it all in order, but it doesn't help anything to do that for Christians.
No.
I think it's also, to Dave's point, the busyness. If your life has things in it that are connected to your Christian faith, it's easy to think like, well, I'm kind of doing this stuff over here for God anyway. It's
Right.
like,
Doesn't that
I got
cover
to
it?
stop and pray about it too. Like I need to do this. I think I've witnessed that in myself. It's easy to look at your to-do list and you sort of see God in different places of it. And it's almost like it's a substitute. It's like, well, he knows I'm doing this stuff, but I got to stop and pray.
But how much is the heart connected?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge hole there.
16 years ago, I realized that what was my biggest problem with that is what I started referring to as the obvious solution. That anytime I was faced with a particular problem or issue that needed to be resolved, almost always the first thing that would pop into my mind was, oh, I know how to fix this. And I would start into trying to do something. And like 30 minutes later, I would realize I wasn't finding the answer. And I would stop and go, wait a minute, why is it taking me this long to do it? And then I would realize, oh, this isn't my problem to solve. This is God's problem to solve. And so I'd stop and pray about it and say, all right, God, I got to let go of this. This isn't my battle. This is your battle.
And
You fix it. You take control. And then about 10 minutes later, I would realize that about 2 minutes after I finished praying that I thought of something different. And I would once again, the obvious solution interrupted, and I was off trying to do something else. And I spent the last 10 minutes doing something and not depending on God again. And I'd have to stop and stop myself and pray all over again.
You remember that verse in Proverbs that says, a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again, but the simple shall fall into mischief.
Yeah. Well,
It's not how many times you fail or fall. It's just getting up one more time.
It's a reaction to it that matters.
I mean, I share that. I mean, it's immediacy. I'm trying now to practice immediacy in prayer. And what I mean is that, and you might observe this. So we have a Discord chat session. That's a gamers
What does that mean?
chat room thing. Text messaging.
It's just the way we communicate.
And when people come out with a prayer request or something that looks like it should use prayer, I soon thereafter, I try to stop and take a moment and say, okay, and I don't I'll pray in my heart, my mind, what's appropriate. And I try to type into that a prayer. I try to type a prayer into that I think is worthy of those that are reading it.
That comes helpful often too, because I will read the same things, like something going on with Connor's kid or whatever. And it's like, I don't even know what to pray about that. and I read what you write and I think about it, and I,
And then-
you know,
and you
but
can
that
then
does
pray.
draw me into prayer just by following.
That's good to hear. I've
Yeah, when I
never
have
got
time.
this reflection
You know.
from anybody.
Well,
I just-
no,
well,
but really it
well,
does.
but-
This, I want to stop here. This is great. I mean, I know two of your sons,
Okay.
Zach and Drew, and I know that you're doing this sort of thing with your family, and I admire that greatly. That's rare, I think. And you're trying to be honest, and you're being transparent too with your family. But here we are, the five of us, and we're able to talk about these things
Yeah.
because it's a common malady of men, I think.
Yeah.
Women do better than we do, I think.
I so identify with what you said, Ray. I mean, I'm out there. A lot of what's consumed my time recently has been the practical matter of taking care of the facility, getting things ready for my mother-in-law, and the blessing of that. And I'll find myself suddenly in an attitude that's really wrong.
Mhm.
You know, grumbling. Why have I messed this up again? But I am getting a little better.
Mhm.
I try to check it before I go very far down that path and say, well, Lord, you know, obviously this is entirely my fault. And somehow or other, I wasn't asking you, or I wasn't listening very well, or you'd have told me how to do this in the first place. And so whatever it is I needed to do, I didn't do it in the right order. And the first thing I didn't do was ask you.
Yeah.
To quote
Yeah.
another to quote another proverb that I think also gets to what you were talking about, Carl, is that pride cometh before the fall. And I find that in retrospect, it never feels like it at the time, but when I feel like I have it all together, that's when I am like
Mhm.
hours away from really messing something up, you know, because my heart is in exactly the most vulnerable place for the enemy to attack.
Isn't it gracious of God, though? He doesn't wham us right away. He gives us an opportunity to correct our
Yeah,
error of our ways.
it's true.
Yeah.
Thanks be he's gracious to
Yeah,
us.
you
He's-
said pride, and that's exactly what I was doing, because I was like, oh, I know how to solve
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. We can all identify with that.
Hmm.
I'd like to share one other thing that happened. If you know, it's getting kind of late. This has been about 12 or 13 years ago. It was before our daughter got married, and they've been married almost 12 years. Heidi was living with us. I'm trying to get things in the right order. Anyway, she had lost a job, and it turned out she was out of work for a total of 21 months. And she had bills to pay, car payment and a house payment. This must have been after she moved out. She bought a house. She had a good job. And she was able to make payments as long as she had the job, but she lost that job. And it was a long time before she got another one. Anyway, we were footing the bill most of that time. I mean, she had some funds at first, but ran through that. And I was laying awake, not able to sleep, worrying about these things. And I remember in the middle of the night, one night, trying to think of ways to find a job for Heidi. Who could I ask? I was trying to manipulate the situation. I'd been praying about it. We all had been praying about it. But then all of a sudden came to my mind a message that I had heard not too long before, but by Chuck Swindoll on the life of Abraham. And he talked about that plan that Sarah had to get a child. because it had been 13 years since God gave the promise and nothing was happening.
Mhm.
And that plan turned out to be a bad one. And Swindoll commented about that. He said he has learned over the years that every time he tries to run ahead of God, he lives to regret it.
Mhm.
And so that came to mind in the middle of the night when I was desperately trying to figure out a way to get a job for Heidi. And I said, Lord, I see now what I'm doing. I'm going to take my hands off and I'll pray about it instead and expect you to work. Well, I was able to go back to sleep right away. I'd been up for 2 or 3 hours probably. And I just left it in the Lord's hands. That was not like me to do that. But I refused to do it. When it came back to my mind about how am I going to work this out, I gave that to the Lord. And it was probably 2 to 3 weeks. And Heidi got a job that was better than the one she had before. Taught me a good lesson. I hope I never have to learn that one again. It has come close to where I was worried about things again and was trying to work things out. But the Lord reminded me that He's faithful. Things don't always work out that way for me but it was my attitude. My lack of faith. Worry is a lack of faith.
Mhm.
And, so I'm learning these things slowly, and like you, I don't want my heart to ever get so hard or cold or unwilling to listen. That's dangerous.
Mhm.
I pray quite often that verse in Hebrews 3 or 4. I think it's in both chapters. Today, if you will hear His voice, harden not your hearts, as in the day of temptation in the wilderness. That scares me, to have a hard heart. So, anyway, enough. Could we have somebody close, please?
Let's finish our recording here. Sorry, give me a second.
Oh, that was